All right, let's dive into a really critical part of the UAW and HydroCam PSC agreement, the attendance policy. If you're in management, you absolutely need to master this progressive point system. Think of it as a tool. It's not just about rules, it's about fairness, keeping productivity up, and making sure your whole team operates like a well-oiled machine.
And this quote right here, this is the bedrock. This is the foundation of the entire policy. Before we even get into points or warnings, the contract makes one thing crystal clear. Showing up on time, regularly, is the baseline expectation. It's non-negotiable.
Now, this is a super important distinction that you have to understand. An employee calling in, that's necessary, right? But it is not enough to just excuse the absence. This one little detail is basically the key that unlocks the entire point system we're about to break down.
So how does this actually work day to day? Well, it all starts with one simple, fundamental ground rule, and it's all about communication.
Here it is. This is the first test. An employee they must, make contact a minimum of 30 minutes before their shift starts. Not 29, not 15. 30 minutes. That's the cutoff for it to be considered a standard, properly called-in absence.
Okay, so what happens when someone doesn't meet that standard? How are points scored? Well, this isn't just some blunt instrument. It's a progressive system, and it's designed to give people warnings before things escalate. But, while it has guidelines, it definitely has teeth.
First off, let's just clarify something real quick. As you can see, this point system has nothing to do with approved time off. We're not talking about your vacation days or your contractual sick days. This is purely focused on unscheduled stuff, absences, and being late.
What's really fascinating about this chart is the story it tells. Just look at that huge jump from a called absence to a no-call/no-show. The penalty literally doubles. And that just perfectly illustrates what this policy values more than anything else: communication.
So here's the exact breakdown. Being late or ducking out of your shift early, that's the smallest penalty, just half a point. Calling in like you're supposed to for a full day, that's 1 full point. But the no call, no show, wow, that's 2 full points. It's the most severe penalty you can get for a single incident.
So, are you stuck with these points forever? Nope, not at all. The system works on what's called a rolling 12-month clock. So, a point gets added on the day of the infraction, it hangs out on an employee's record for exactly 1 year to the day, and then, poof, it's gone. Now that we know how you get points, let's talk about what happens when they start to pile up. I like to call this the consequence ladder, and believe me, every step up carries a much heavier weight.
The first big number you need to be watching for is 3. Hitting 3 points is the first official red flag that an employee's attendance is becoming a real problem.
At 3 points, it's not just a casual chat, it triggers a mandatory counseling session. And this is a formal meeting, okay? You'll have both a management rep and a union rep there, and a first written warning goes into the employee's official file.
And it really doesn't take much to get to that next rung on the ladder. The second threshold is just 1 point later, at 4 total points.
And when an employee hits 4 points, it's basically a déjà vu. The exact same process kicks in all over again. Another mandatory counseling session with union representation present, and a second written warning. The system is very clearly documenting a pattern here.
All right, from here, we take a pretty big leap. Once we hit 7 points, the consequences go way beyond just warnings and into something much, much more serious. Reaching 7 points means another counseling session, sure, but this time it comes with a 1-day suspension. And let's be clear, that suspension is unpaid. This is the point where the policy starts to have a direct impact on an employee's paycheck.
And that brings us to the very top. The final, most critical stage in this entire process. This is it.
8. This is the number. The number that every single employee and every single manager needs to have burned into their memory.
If an employee racks up 8 points within that rolling 12-month window, their job is officially on the line. Now that phrase, subject to dismissal, it doesn't mean they're automatically fired on the spot, but it does mean there are grounds for it, and the ball is in your court as management to act fast. You've got to hold a counseling session within 3 working days of that final infraction.
So, this system sounds pretty strict, pretty rigid, right? Well, it does have some flexibility built right in. There are 2 specific safety valves that are designed to handle those situations that are truly unavoidable.
And as you can see, these 2 pads are pretty different. The first one is management discretion. That's on you. You can decide to waive that 30-minute call-in rule if there are really extreme circumstances. The second path is an employee appeal, and that's a formal process that the employee has to kick off themselves.
Now, for an employee to appeal, they have to follow these steps to the letter. They only get 4 appeals a year. They have to provide actual, legitimate proof of what happened. And, this is so important, they have to get that evidence to HR the moment they get back to work. The burden of proof is 100% on them.
So when you take a step back and look at the whole picture, you've got this very strict, pretty unforgiving points system on one hand, but then you have these very specific escape hatches on the other. It kind of begs a big question for you, as managers. As you get ready to enforce this, what is it really? Is it a tool that creates accountability, or does it risk creating a culture of fear? Honestly, the answer to that is probably going to depend on how you decide to use it.